The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our webinar, Social Media and Recruiting, the Good, the Bad, and the Dangers. My name is Julie Dorr and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our presentation will last approximately 40 minutes and the remaining time will be available for your questions. We have a very interactive presentation today, so I highly recommend you use that question tab over on the right-hand side. Just put your questions in there. You'll kind of get in a lineup. We'll treat it like an airplane runway kind of thing, and you'll get lined up. We'll answer or ask those questions and have them answered by our presenters today in the order that they were received. So go ahead and add those questions in on the right-hand side. Also, if you did not receive a link this morning in an email, we sent the presentation out, so in case you want to take notes. If you didn't receive that or would like me to send it to you again, go ahead and email me right now at julie@enlightenbiz.com. Again, that's julie@enlightenbiz.com, and that email is also on the screen right now. And I'll be sure to send that to you right away. And then also, before we get started, please note that this webinar and all of the accompanying materials are protected by copyright and that the entire conference is being recorded. This presentation provides general information only and does not constitute legal advice. We recommend that you consult with legal counsel to address your specific situation. So let's get started by introducing our presenters today. First, we have Linda Duffy, who is the president of Ethos Human Capital Solutions. Linda works with business owners and executives to provide strategic human resources direction, develop leadership talent, and increase organizational effectiveness. And then we also have attorney Marla Merhab Robinson. Marla is with the law firm Merhab Robinson Jackson and Clarkson, where she is a partner and the head of the firm's transactional department. She primarily practices in the areas of corporate, mergers and acquisition, real estate, finance, and employment law. So we're going to get started today on the agenda, and we've got two main points. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very interactive demonstration today. So first, we're going to cover the legal issues with social media for recruiting, and then, of course, go into that demo. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Marla so we can get that legal stuff out of the way. Marla, can you take it over from there?
I can. Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited about this because Linda's going to be giving us a great demonstration on LinkedIn, and I'm going to be a participant instead of a panelist in that area for sure. On the legal issues, there's very few because this is so new. What we want when we're talking about recruiting and the use of social media in recruiting, what we first want to look at is when are we using it? Are we using it after interviewing a candidate, or are we using it to search before we're even aware of a candidate? Last year, some of you may remember this because we covered it in a prior webinar, the state of California adopted a law that prohibits employers from requiring or requesting an employee or an applicant to disclose a username or password for the purpose of assessing personal social media. Also prohibits the employer from requiring an employee to access social media in the presence of the employer and divulging any personal social media. And of course, social media includes videos, photographs, blogs, podcasts, texts, messages, emails, online accounts, website profiles, Twitters, on and on and on. Everything new, and that's why the law has not yet caught up. California was very progressive in this, adopting this law, and I expect that many states will follow, and we will see much more legislation and cases coming down regarding social media. There are very few right now. Of course, an exception to this is that employers can require employees to divulge passwords or any other information necessary to get onto employer-owned computers and tablets and smartphones and the like. Now be aware that in using social media and hiring, it does open up potential claims against the employer, and that's the legal side of it. It opens the employer to potential risk of liability of discrimination claims and noncompliance with regulations. There's a difference between using social media to find candidates and using it to assess candidates. And that's what I want to focus on in the legal discussion. As I said before, there's little direct legal precedent around the issues. At this point, there are a few cases. I'm going to touch on a couple of them. Again, it's likely that legislation and case law will become more, not just clear, but adopted in the near future. The law catches up to technology always. It's always behind. But one of the things you should take away from this webinar is that you need to have policies in place that protect against discriminatory practices and are explicit in how social media information can be used by employees in the hiring process. And also if you're using outside recruiting in that process as well. So it's important to also note that all citizens in the state of California have a right to privacy under the California Constitution. That includes employees and candidates. And what that right to privacy is a reasonable expectation of privacy. And so I shouldn't have to say this, but I find that I do because recruiters attempt this. You shouldn't try to go around blocks or passwords or firewalls that candidates or employees may have in place and try and find information that you're not even allowed to access. You already create potential risks just by accessing the information that isn't blocked. So the most prevalent risk is the risk of a discrimination claim. And that arises when you find out information that you're not otherwise allowed to ask. We call it the protected classes, and we've listed them there. It keeps expanding, the most recent being genetic information and sexual gender. So again, you're not allowed to ask it. Most of you know you're not allowed to ask these questions when interviewing, but it comes out in your search in social media, and you find out information that you're not otherwise allowed to ask. You may even find out that someone's filed a workers' compensation claim before because they put it out on their social media. People are not real smart about what they put out there, and you're not allowed to ask that. So the minute you have that information, you become potentially a target by a candidate that you didn't hire, that the reason you didn't hire them was because of one of these protected classes. Even though you may not have made your decision based on that, once you find that information out, you're subject to the risk that that's what they're going to claim. The other is disparate impact, and that is a form of discrimination that occurs when, even though there was no discriminatory intent, the result is discriminatory. An example would be, in recruiting, would be searching in groups. I'm going to give you a very simple example, and that would be, I'm going to search through a group of a Catholic organization where everybody in the group is Catholic. Well, that's religious discrimination. You left out the Protestants and the Jews and every other religion. So many recruiters don't think when they're searching in groups that that might result in a disparate impact against a protected class. And again, those protections are all of those listed here, and it keeps expanding. So that's a huge risk and an unknown risk. But just as a side note, on the case of genetic information, you know that's a relatively new law, and it requires or prohibits use of genetic information in making employment decisions, including genetic information about family members. So a woman might inadvertently post on Facebook or even LinkedIn something about her spouse and concerns about some health issue. And if a recruiter sees that or uses that in assessing a candidate, maybe because they're trying to keep health insurance premiums down or concerned about loss of work time because of doctor's appointments, that's going to be a violation. That's going to result in a discriminatory claim. And another major refusal to hire case, again, these are just examples of a couple of it because that's all we have. A candidate for a teaching position at the University of Kentucky was knocked out of the running after someone at the school performed an internet search and turned up evidence of his extreme evangelical beliefs. The university informed him of the internet search and of its concern with his views. This is an example of the employer admitting using improper information in determining or assessing a candidate. Then the school hired someone else and rejected him, and he sued, of course, and the case settled for $125,000. These types of refusal to hire claims, I believe, will become more prevalent as more companies use social media. And again, it just sparks a lawsuit, just the appearance of discrimination. And with the use of social media, if there is information on any of those protected class, you have that potential. This one, the Kentucky case, as I said, is very blatant. That's not always the case. The other risk is the using inaccurate or protected information. Not everything on the internet is true, despite what many believe. I get calls all the time from someone who tells me, this has got to be the law. I saw it on the internet. And I have to tell them, you're absolutely correct. That is the law, just not the law of the state of California. California is very different, especially in employment laws, as you all know, than many other states. So information online is often inaccurate or misleading. Think of photoshopping. How many times have you seen photoshopping that sometimes ends up? The other thing is some activity may not appear to be protected when it actually is. So, for example, if you saw a picture of somebody marching in an abortion, against abortion and holding a sign, that's protected political activity. And if you use that in assessing that candidate, that's going to make you at risk for discrimination claim and judgment as well. So if you're not, even if the applicant doesn't sue, you could potentially be losing a good employee using information you shouldn't use. And in fact, many recruiters don't know that Facebook's service and use agreement actually prohibits this type of use for eliminating a job candidate. So if you're doing that, you should take a look at the Facebook service agreement. And one of the tools that you are allowed to use as a recruiter is credit reports. And the use of social media can result in background and credit history information that would bring in the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act and also California's, which we don't have listed here. I apologize for that. And in that case, it may require you, if you're using third-party recruiters, to also follow that law with respect to getting consent and advising if those reports are used and the applicant is declined, letting them know that, giving them an opportunity to see those reports. So keep that in mind if you are using them. We have previously done a webinar on social media, and I would put here the link to it so you can take a look at it. My recommendation here and your takeaway should be not to use social media for assessing a candidate, only for identifying a candidate. So that goes back to the timing of the use of social media. I would encourage you to use traditional assessments such as resume sharing, or screening, interviews, traditional tests such as drug testing, background checks, credit checks, and other tests and assessments, rather than social media for assessing a candidate. Certainly for identifying and pulling out of the huge candidate pool, I think that's important, but these others just come with too great a risk. And I would encourage you to make sure that your policies, your handbooks, for anybody who might be doing recruiting inside, that they make it clear that this is how you should be using social media and only how you should be using social media. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Linda for the fun part of the program.
All right. Thanks, Marla. That was awesome, as always, and very informative. So I know we do have some people on the line that are from outside the state of California, so you want to make sure that you check to see if there's any similar laws that are in the state in which you live and work. But a lot of this applies to federal law as well, so just want to make sure that you are equally cautious. My part of the presentation today is going to be just very interactive. So I get requests all the time from people to say, can you show me how you use LinkedIn to recruit? And we thought it would be a good topic today. And the way that I find it most effective to do this is just to jump into LinkedIn and actually show some things live, because for those of you that are using LinkedIn on a regular basis, they change their website. I swear it's like every single week. So I was doing a presentation to a group of employment attorneys the other night, and literally something was different from the day before. So it's going to be quick on the fly here and hopefully pass along some useful tips for those of you that do recruit, whether you're recruiters, and I know we have recruiters on the phone, but also your business owners, or if you're on the phone because you want to know how recruiters think, which I have a feeling we have some people that are doing that as well. So when I think of recruiting, I break it down into two different categories. First of all, how do I attract people that are active candidates, those people that are actively looking for a job, that are looking to make a change. Some people are just always exploring, but some people are actively searching because they're not at work right now, or maybe they are in a job but they want to make a change. And then the second one is, how do I source passive candidates? How do I go out and find those candidates who maybe aren't looking right now? Maybe they're employed and they think they're really happy in their position, but I think they're an awesome candidate for a client that I'm doing a search for. And so I break it down into those two, attracting the active candidates and then sourcing the passive ones. And so I'm going to give you some tips for both of those categories. So let's start with attracting active candidates. So for those people that are out there that are looking all the time, I think there's a few different ways you can use LinkedIn to sort of engage with them, keep them sort of in your hip pocket and always looking to see what you're talking about and what you're doing. so that they're interested in your company or the type of work openings that you have available, that they're more apt to sort of follow you. And if you look along this top menu right here, and hopefully this is going to be seamless, fingers crossed. If you just go across and you highlight, or you hover over the different things, you'll see jobs and everything. When you come to interest, you'll see companies as the very top line. So if you click on that and go into companies, this is where you, for your company, can set up a company page, which would be different from setting up your own personal profile. You have to have a personal profile in order to set up the company page. And for those of you that are business owners, you want to make sure that when you set up the company page, that there's probably more than one person that set up as an administrator, and that you know what those passwords are. That is one of the times when you can ask for passwords when it's your company profile. And so, like you can see here, that I've got my company page set up on LinkedIn. Now, I will also say, in full disclosure, this is our great moderator and my marketing guru, Julie, who set most of this up for me. That's why she gets paid the big bucks. So she set this up, put everything in, and you can see it's a lot of really good information about my company. So I can post updates to it, and you're seeing, obviously, as an administrator, you're seeing information that you wouldn't see on my page if you went there now as, just as somebody coming to my page. So, for example, I can look at analytics, how many people have come to my page, that type of stuff. But you can put, on the products and services page, you can link to different things. So Julie was kind enough to go through and put different parts of my business here to highlight them, like recruiting and consulting, training, mentoring, and then some of the products that I actually sell, our newsletter, the blog, and, of course, the webinars down at the bottom. So it's a really good way to just be out there, and you can see I don't have a lot of people following me yet, but 12 followers, and so people can actually follow you just like they can on a lot of other different social media sites. So when I make an update on this page, or when Julie adds something for me to this page, it will show up actually on the home page of those people that are following me. So if they're on LinkedIn, they'll actually see what I'm doing. So going back over to the home page here, this is a place right here at the top where I can actually update something. So let's say I have a job opening that I am trying to fill. So, for example, we're getting ready to start a job search for project managers. Okay, so I could just type whatever right here about, I'm looking for a great project manager for the Irvine, California area. I could type all this out. I'm not going to do it, but I can type all this out. And then I can come over here and I can click on this link to actually attach a file. It would take me out to my file. Okay, and so I can click on whatever I want there and actually attach the file. Or right here in the middle of the update, let's say I have it posted someplace. It could be out on a more traditional job site like CareerBuilder or Monster. It could be on LinkedIn, obviously. It could be that I have it uploaded to my website. It could be Constant Contact. Wherever there's sort of a place you can post a file that you can then obtain a URL to, you can drop the URL right here and just direct people to that. So that's one way that I do this all the time, is I will post this update because it will show up on the home page of my connections and the people following me if I do it from this page here. And then I have the option of, do I want to share it with all followers, or LinkedIn is now allowing you to have targeted audience. So that there are some fees involved with some of this, so you just want to make sure that you're careful about what you do there. But it's a great tool to use, so you can actually post those job openings in a way and then get them out to an audience. And if I go back over to just my general home page, I can do the same update from right here. So I can do it from here or from my personal profile page, but I can do the same thing here, and I can just type in whatever I want. Again, I can attach a file, and then I can decide who I want to share this with. Now, on this page, it's a little bit different because this is going to come from my personal profile. So I can say I want it to be public. I do use Twitter, and so I can say I want to go ahead and tweet it as well as putting it here. Okay? And then I can also say I just want you to send it to my connections, which is my first level connection. So typically, I use this one because I do want to just sort of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. And I'll go ahead, and once I do this and I hit share, it will show up on the home page, of everybody, and it's out there sort of in the LinkedIn cyberspace, but it's also going to go out to my Twitter account. So if I have people that are following me on Twitter, it's going to show up in their timeline feed, and they'll be able to see those job openings as well. That's a really good way to connect with people that are not in your normal local network, because you never know. Maybe that, somebody in Ohio sees a job posting, but they have a cousin that lives here in Irvine that's looking for a project manager job. You just never know where those connections and referrals are going to come from. So typically when I use this, I will say, hey, I'm doing a search for one of our clients, and we're looking for fill in the blank, like I said, a project manager. You could just constantly be putting information out here. There's a lot of ways to engage with your prospective candidates, just to give some value add, or just talk about what's going on in your industry if you're trying to target project managers in a certain industry. We're doing a search right now for the position titled Assistant Director, but it's really a manager of project managers in the energy efficiency arena. So I could post information about energy efficiency just to see who might be interested in that topic. So it's a way to, again, sort of attract people, get them to engage with you if they're out there actively looking for positions, and you just never know where that's going to come from. The other way on here is clearly just to go and post jobs. So if I go back over to my company for a second, there is a way on here as well that I can go, let's see, where do I want to do this? So I can learn more here, so interested in ESA Human Capital Solutions, right? So there's different ways that I can post from here. Let me just go to the jobs page. That's going to be easier for everybody. And so it says right here if you just want to post a job, right? So again, candidates can search for jobs right here, but you can post a job anytime, and it's going to just walk you through. Now, to post a job on LinkedIn for 30 days is $295 unless you buy in bulk. For those of you that don't know and you haven't gone out to other websites like CareerBuilder and Monster, it's roughly $400 or so for 30 days for posting on one of those main websites. So it's a little less expensive. It doesn't have necessarily the same broad appeal, because you do have to have an account set up to look, and it may be a more restrictive audience, but it may be that you want a more restrictive audience as well. So if you're looking for somebody that's entry level, this is not the place to post a job, right? But if you're looking for more of a professional level person or somebody that has a specific skill set, to post on LinkedIn might be a good use of those marketing funds if that's what you want to do. Okay, I want to go back to the company page for one more thing just to show people. So when you click under interest and click on companies, you'll see up here on the right where it says add a company. And that's how easy it is. So you do have to have an email address tied to the domain name of the company, so you cannot use like a Gmail or Yahoo account, email address, or anything like that. So you have to have something. So like in my case, I have to have linda@ethoshcs.com in order to go in and actually create a company page. So that's the only restriction on this, and then it's free to set up. So you just go in, and there's a wizard that walks you through it, and then if you need more help like I need, you engage somebody like Julie to actually do it for you. Yay, Julie. Okay, so those are some tips on attracting candidates that are actually out there looking on a regular basis. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we source passive candidates, because really this is where we make our money when it comes to looking for people. Because let's face it, anybody can go out and pay money and post an ad and have people respond, but you're missing a whole lot of people out there that didn't know they were interested in a new job until you talk to them and explain why they'd be interested in a new job. So the first place we always come to source candidates, honestly, besides just our general network, is on LinkedIn. Because again, when somebody engages our firm, it's on a retained search basis. So we're the only company working with that client to fill a position. So we're going to come here and we're going to start sourcing people in our networks online that might be interested in the opportunity that we have. So there's a couple of different tools on here that I want to show you how to use. First and foremost is the advanced search function. So at the top of this page, this is just a general search function, and you can type some things in here. But if you look to the right of this, you'll see right here where there's a hyperlink that says advanced. And so I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take me to the advanced people search page. So first and foremost, let me just explain one thing to people in case you don't know. Again, hopefully everybody here is on LinkedIn and using LinkedIn, but just to make sure we have sort of the vernacular correct. And Marla, this may be for you. So people that are first level connections are people that you have a direct relationship with. So Marla and I would be connected on LinkedIn. She would be my first level connection. Now, let's say Marla's connected to Julie, but I'm not for some reason. Marla and Julie would be first level connections to each other. Julie and I would be second level connections to one another, and Marla would be sort of our go-between, okay? Then you can go out on LinkedIn and you can measure out 3 different levels. So now let's say Julie's connected to somebody down in San Diego where she lives. I may not know that person. That person's a third level connection to me, a second level connection to Marla, and then a first level connection to Julie. And it's important to understand that. A lot of times I'll get people saying to me, hey, I see that you're connected to so-and-so. Can you make me an introduction? And I go and look, and they're a second or third level connection. Okay, I don't know the person. I just know somebody who knows them. So there's a little bit of difference, and so you want to make sure that you understand the vernacular there and how the system sort of works. When you do a search, you can say, I want to see my first, second, and third level connections. You can say, I want to see my third level connections and everyone else. And you can also say, show me group members. And I'm going to spend a little time in a minute talking about groups because I think it's a great way to engage candidates that you cannot otherwise talk to on LinkedIn. So I think a lot of people are going to get a big aha from that later. So let's stick on this page for a second. And what I'm going to do, just for the sake of being able to restrict this a little bit, I'm going to remove my first level connections because the truth is I already know who they are, right? So I can just go into my Outlook contacts and search for them. I don't need to search for them right here. So the other thing to keep in mind, and I do pay, you can see up in the left-hand corner here, I do pay for a premium account. So I'm paying, I think it's like $30 a month. So I have a little bit of additional search functionality that you won't have on a free account. The one that I use a lot is on company size over here on the right, because a lot of my employers are in that small range. And so I want to make sure I'm not pulling people from Boeing to go into a client that's got 50 or 100 employees. Okay, and then some of these are restricted even to me. But the ones on the right over here with the bold lettering, those are the ones that you might have to pay a little bit more if you want to be able to use that. You may not need it at all, so I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say, and this is something I did probably a couple years ago now. I had a client that has sort of a software IT services firm, and they will work on like enterprise management systems for companies or customer relationship management tools, CRM packages for companies. And they asked if I could help them find a CRM salesperson. So someone's going to be outside sales and selling these CRM packages to potential clients. So one way I can go find that person is to come right here and type in CRM as a keyword, right? I could also type in sales if I want to, right? I can also put sales in the title because I would assume that anybody that is selling, would have some form of sales, but you got to think that through because maybe they don't. Maybe they have, director of marketing or, some technical title if they're selling CRM packages. But we can start with this. I can say right here if I care whether they have that in their title currently or in the past, right? I don't need first name, last name because I don't know who I'm looking for. I usually don't use the company function right there because, again, I'm not looking to pull somebody from a specific company, although sometimes that happens, in which case I could look and say, tell me who works at that company, right? If I had something specific, some type of school program I wanted, I used to work in a ceramics company, and so there were only a handful of schools that had ceramic engineering degrees, so that might be a way I would use that. A lot of times I will use this, where I will say I want it located in or near something. I'm just going to use my zip code, 92614, and then I can restrict the radius around that. So I can say, okay, I'm really only looking for people that are 25-mile radius around that because I don't want to pull people from out of state or anyplace else. Okay? I can do all that. In the center over here, I can go through some of these. Industry is not listed on the left. So if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to find somebody, that had a specialty, I don't know, in it could be aviation or whatever. There's a whole bunch of things here that I can scroll down and look, and I can just check as many boxes as I want here if I want to narrow it down. I'm not going to narrow it down right now, So I'm just telling you that's another function that you have. Okay, once I get whatever keywords I want and everything else, I'm just going to hit search. These are my results again, keep in mind, because you're always searching for your connections, right? So I'm looking at second connections and group members, right? And it's showing me that I have 4,180 results for people that have the word CRM and sales in their profile, right? And then they have sales in their title. And you can see, like Eugenie Brown, for example. I don't know why first level connection is showing up, but Eugenie Brown is listed here. And you start going down and you can see it has sales, 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 sales. Now, when I start looking down, like look at right here, I look at this and I go, oh, Steve Fox. You know, I didn't think of Steve Fox. Look, he's done sales before and he has CRM integration experience. So then what I can do is I can actually just click on his name, go to his profile, or over here on the right, it's going to tell me what my options are. So in this case, because he's a first level connection, I can go ahead and just message him directly, click on this, and I can just type in and just say, like, hey, Steve, I've got this opening. You know, I can, you know, direct him via URL to wherever I have the posting, or I could just reach out and say, hey, I'm just wondering if you're interested in talking about this fabulous opportunity I have, or if not, maybe you know somebody. And that's one of the tricks I always tell people is always ask for the referral, right? Anybody that's in sales knows that. Always ask for the referral. Steve may not be interested in the position, but he, you know, if he came out of companies that were selling CRM packages, he might very well have other connections that he can share with me, okay? So I would just send him off an email in that case, and then strike up a conversation, hopefully. Now, if I go out here a few, let's just jump out here, see if I can get, so these are second level connections. So we take a look at this, and I say, okay, I don't know, let's see, I don't know who Tracy Harvard is, right? But what I can do is click right here where it says we have 6 shared connections. So now I look and I go, oh, Mary Knightlick knows Tracy. That's awesome. So I'm going to go look at his profile and say, this is the guy that I really would like to meet, or I'd like to talk to about this opening. I don't have a way to connect with him or email him within LinkedIn because we're not direct connections. See that little number, the second there, that little number 2. But I can tell from this who does have a connection, a shared connection. So Mary Knightlick, I know Mary well, so I have to call up Mary and say, hey, tell me about this Tracy Harvard guy. I'm looking for this type of position. Do you know anything about him? Do you have his contact information? Or could you make an introduction to me? And LinkedIn does have this system over here where it says get introduced. So that's one way that I could do it. I also have send InMail. InMail does cost, okay? So it's not terribly expensive, and with my premium, I get so many per month. But if you just have a free account, then you're going to end up paying for InMail. So that's why in a second I'm going to show you a tip to sort of get around that you'll find helpful. So right now, I could just say I want to get introduced to this guy. Click on that. And then it's going to say, okay, who's going to be the person that's going to help me with that? Okay, and I'm going to say Mary. Okay, and then here's what I can do is like I can right here, you know, say to Mary, hey, would you please make an introduction to me with Tracy? You know, I'm interested in talking to him about this position, and I can put the information right in here that will then get forwarded on to Tracy. Okay, so it's a really simple system. It does work when you're trying to go 3 levels out, but honestly, it's just very difficult and sort of cumbersome to use, and you're completely relying on the kindness of strangers at that point to go, you know, a couple people away, so I just never use it myself, but there is a way to do that. So I'm going to go through one more search, again, just to show you. So for some of you, usually if I'm doing this live, I would just ask for volunteers, but I have to, at this point, let's try to go back, sorry. At this, I'm just going to make up another one. So let's say you're out there and you want to connect with CEOs. Somebody has a CEO in the title. Let's do it that way. Or it could be business owner or something like that. But let's say, you know, maybe you're selling a product to them, or again, you're trying to recruit for a CEO or something like that. You can restrict it. Oops, sorry about that. Don't mean to make everybody dizzy. You can restrict it again geographically. This time I'll just leave it at 50. And then again, maybe I'm looking, let's use industry this time. I'm looking for, let's see, I don't know, let's do something in the food industry. That's good. So let's say I'm looking for somebody that's in food production or food and beverages, something like that. Again, I could use company size if I wanted to. Not too important to do today. And I'm just going to hit search and see if we get anybody. Okay, so I've got 116 results of people that have CEO in a title. It's not necessarily, I mean, it does say current title, but you'll see some of these don't have it. And then I can just start going down here and just looking at each one to say, oh, you know, if Susan's somebody I want to talk to, you know, here's her experience right here. You can see she's got CEO right there. Okay, she's got food industry entrepreneur. Looks tasty. And I can just scroll down and take a look and just say, okay, is this somebody that I'm interested in connecting with? Okay. If I want, I can send her in mail, or again, I can connect with her. And of course, I can always look to see where we have people in common. In this case, it's a very long list. We have 34 people that we share in common. Okay? I could reach out to any one of them to say, hey, what do you know about Susan? Can you make an introduction for me? It doesn't have to be through LinkedIn. Obviously, if you're a first-level connection, you have access to the person's contact information. And that's the other thing I'll just show you real quickly. So let's just pull up Marla real quick on here. Okay, look at her profile. And so that's one of the things that you can see is because we're a first-level connection, this is what it says right there, I can click on contact info, and then right down here, I can just have her direct information. So she's already populated that for me. So it's great when you're already directly connected, but again, if you're not directly connected, find out the person or the people that you have between you know, you and that other person, and then you can just get the information directly from them. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. All right, the last thing I want to do before we take some questions is show what I hope is a really good tip for people. I'm going to go back to my home page over here. All right, under interests where we found companies before, there are also groups. Okay, you can subscribe or follow or participate in, however you want to look at it, up to 50 groups. And you can see I have quite a few listed here. Now, one that sort of jumps out, and I'm going to use it and I leave it here because I use this as an example a lot, is CRM experts. I'm clearly not a CRM expert, nor do I ever hope to be, but I was doing a search for CRM salespeople. So I went ahead and joined this CRM experts group because I wanted access to their members, right? Because presumably people that are in this space, you know, some of them are going to be selling, you know, CRM packages. So when you go into a group, you can see, like in this case, there's 57,000 members. Obviously, this could be worldwide, okay? 57 members. Now, if you look over here, there's a little I to the right of the member, and I want to click on that because I want to get into the settings, okay? So right below that, it says Your Settings. LinkedIn, I'll change this in the last couple months. And so here are two things that are really, really critical to understand, or the two boxes. When you sign up for a group, I'm going to raise this up a little bit. When you sign up for a group, these last two boxes are affirmatively checked, okay? So unless you go into your group settings and uncheck those boxes, okay, what this will allow people to do is the first one says allow the group manager to send me an email, okay? There's usually just one group manager per group. But look at this last box, and you'll see how critical this box is. Allow members of this group to send me messages via LinkedIn. So remember before I said that when I just do a search and I pull up a list of people, I'm not able to necessarily directly contact them unless I want to pay for in-mail, right? I either have to find someone to make an introduction, use the Get Introduced link, right, or figure out another way to connect with them. If, however, we share a group, that will allow me just to directly contact people at no cost, okay, unless they have unchecked this box. Okay, so now we're in CRM Experts, and there's members. I can click on the members right here, okay, and I've got a few first-level connections here, right? So very quickly, I'm going to get down to second-level connections, right? So I can just start, you know, right here you'll see I can follow her, I can see her activity, whatever. I can just send a message to her. I don't have to have any other direct connection with her. She's a second-level connection, right? But I can just send a message to her, okay? That's how simple that is. I have used this time and time again. So what I would do on this is I would scroll down here and I would start doing a search, and I could put in here, for example, I could search for sales, right? Now, it's harder because you're not going to restrict geographically, so that is going to be like the one other challenge about this. But I could put in sales, and then I could start looking down here, and I could say, okay, let me figure out, get down here, you know, VP of Sales and Integrated Solution for Schools and Easy CRM. let me go ahead and just send Connie a message because maybe she's interested in new opportunities as an outside sales consultant selling CRM packages, right? I just click on this, send her a message, and then just say, hey, are you interested in talking, just like I mentioned before, okay? So hopefully you understand how critical that is, because I think that is just a hidden gem that a lot of people aren't aware of. And again, it all goes back to joining groups that otherwise you wouldn't be able to contact people, but because you share a group, you're allowed to contact them directly unless they've unchecked that box, okay? So again, we can just also up here at the top, it depends what you're looking for. So pick your product, your industry, your whatever. So I could say, let's see, one recently, for example, is Sandler sales. I'm doing an outside sales search for somebody they need to know Sandler sales system. So I can go ahead and I can put Sandler sales in here, and then on the left over here I can say show me people, show me jobs, show me companies, show me groups. So this is how I found a couple of Sandler groups that I could join, and then do the same thing to go in. Now the other thing about groups is you'll see like on this top one right here, there's a little tiny box, don't know how well you can see on your screen. That means that that group is locked. So what you have to be able to do is actually go in and go in and request basically to join the group. As you can see down here, it says join, 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 join. You would have to go in and click on join, and then the group manager makes the decision as to whether or not you would be eligible to join in that group. Okay? So in my case, I've been through Sandler sales training myself, so I added it to my profile. Frankly, it wasn't there before, but added it to my profile very quickly. So then when the group manager, if he or she was going to go out and check like my so-called credentials, they would see that it was in my profile, and then they went ahead and let me join. Okay? So then in that case, I can go into that group. I can do the same thing I just showed you. I can look for people that might be in my geographic area for this particular position, reach out to them, ask them if they're interested in a new opportunity, and go from there. Okay? And with that, Julie, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and then Marla and I will be happy to answer any questions for our remaining 15 minutes or so.
Great. Thank you so much, ladies. Again, Linda and Marla, really helping us not only learn LinkedIn, but legally how to use some of the LinkedIn practices and social media in general. That does conclude the presentation portion of our webinar today, so I'd like to spend the remaining 15 minutes or so answering any of the questions you have. And again, how to do that. Over on the right-hand side, there's a questions tab. All you need to do is type in your question there and hit send, and I will read it aloud for either Marla or for Linda to read. Sorry, I've been getting some questions here. Anyway, let's start here. And Linda, this might be for you. On the LinkedIn, there was a section at one point in time where it actually said, picture yourself at Wells Fargo, and there's like a sidebar. Are there other types of advertising and things that you can do on LinkedIn to get, as the job market heats up and it gets a little bit more competitive, are there other ways to promote your company on LinkedIn that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the bottom of this page, it says advertising right here. So I don't want to jump on that page, but if you go to the advertising, there's ways there. If you go on the jobs page, they have new ways that you can do that, where you can sort of like highlight a job opening, if you will, or direct market it to a target audience. So they absolutely are doing this. I mean, LinkedIn clearly is trying to monetize some of this as they move forward, and that's why they're making a lot of changes. So I would just go down at the bottom and click on that advertising as one, and then also on the jobs tab, there are some options there for you as well.
And I think maybe this question is more for Marla. Specifically, when going in and approaching someone that hasn't necessarily applied for your job opening, is there any, can you say something? I noticed you have XYZ skills. You're using their profile to pre-qualify them for a position. Is there any, information you can't share with them or you shouldn't share with them when you're approaching them about a position?
Well, you should never say, oh, I noticed that you're Irish,
okay.
Because that's a protected class. And Linda and I are laughing because that seems, I'm Irish too. That seems like a very friendly, nice thing to say, but unfortunately, it's a protected class, and that's when the risk comes in. So you shouldn't ever say anything about information that you see that has to do with the protected class. And again, it could be something that I saw that your husband was in a skiing accident and he's got a broken leg that's going to require 4 surgeries.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
hopefully no one's posting that on LinkedIn, but yeah, understood your point if you're on Facebook or something. I mean, Julie, here's the other thing is I always do sort of the oblique hit, right? So like I have definitely sourced and hired people on LinkedIn before. We were doing, as an example, a director of HR search for, we'll just say a retail client. It's a cell phone company. And I found a woman on here that I thought was perfect for this opportunity, and she was an HR manager at a larger company. This was going to give her a seat at the table. But I didn't go to her directly and say, hey, it looks like you're perfect on your skill set. I said, you know, hey, I've got this opening. I thought, you know, it might be something you're interested in, or you might know somebody that is. And I always give them that out in case they're like, what? I'm not looking for a job, right? I don't want them to be offended by that. I don't want them just to also just shut me down and say, no, not interested. But if anytime, you know, people like to help people. So when I say to them, or you might know somebody, you know, a lot of times they'll say, hey, it's not for me, but I'm going to forward this to a friend. You know, or they might say, no, not me, but you might want to reach out to this person. So, you know, give them options, and then it's going to reduce any sort of issue you have. But if you're responding based on what their skill set is and it's job related, I don't know that you have a lot of, you know, a lot of concern.
okay, good. Thank you. And one other question too we have about groups. And you know, Linda, you might want to answer this one. In posting a job to a group, do you have to post in the special section, or can you put it in the normal stream? You know, like they have 2 special sections usually within groups. Is there any recommendation how to do that?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on the group, right? So like Sandler Sales Training, this particular group I'm a member of, okay, I can click on the Jobs tab right here, okay, and it's going to take me over to like the actual jobs where people have posted, okay? And so it's going to take me back to Post Now, take me back to the job page, okay. But sometimes what the group manager will allow you to do, and you just want to, if you don't see rules for this group, then I would be really careful about that before you post something. But you can use this discussions tab right here. So for example, like they have, somebody's taking this little poll right here, which CRM solution do you, your customers use? My gut tells me if I was to click on his name, it turns out that he happens to sell these. But you know, that's probably why he's posting it. And then there's people that engage right here in the discussion, okay? So you could potentially start a discussion right here to say, hey, everybody, you know, I'm doing a search for this particular position. Does anybody happen to know anybody that might be interested in, you know, this outside sales consultant that knows Sandler sales in Southern California, something like that. Not every group will allow you to do it, so you just want to make sure that if you don't see, and I don't even know where it is anymore, to be honest with you, if it's under settings or what, there used to be, yeah, like if you go to group profile maybe, there used to be that groups could post sort of rules for their group. And so you want to look around, and if you have any questions about it, then you want to email whoever the owner, so-called owner is of the group, and say, hey, is this allowed, and see what they say.
Okay, good. And Linda, and maybe Marla too, you mentioned that you have the premium version of LinkedIn. Is that recommended if you're recruiting and you're doing recruiting? Because, you know, what are the benefits, I guess, of the premium version of LinkedIn?
Yeah, and if you, you know, if you go to, I don't know where it is anymore. I thought if I clicked on premium it would get us there. If you go and you look, it'll, maybe it's upgrade, it will tell you the different choices. So like right here, for example, it compares the plans for you. It'll tell you different things. So it, you know, it can be inexpensive. You know, like okay, so I'm paying $20 a month, right? It tells me like these different things. So you do my profile, I get 3 emails a month, whatever, and it's going to tell you the differences, right? The thing that I like is that it gives me a few more views than the other ones. So when I do a search, I'm, you know, it's usually restricted to like 100 or, you know, 100 profiles or something like that. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that's what it used to be. So like this says 7-time search results, you know, whatever, and 25 emails. That's if I upgrade. So you just have to go through and look at the different choices. They have super expensive ones. Like there's a talent finder one at the bottom that is super expensive for larger companies that want full, applicant tracking system that's pretty robust, right? For me, don't need that much. So I paid so I can have a little bit more on the advanced search, some of the gold categories over here on the right. So I can search groups, and like I said, the company size is the big one that I want to look at. That allows me to do that, and then also I can see like 300 responses instead of 100 or something like that.
Okay, good. And Larry's got a question here. When using LinkedIn for recruiting, I seem to have difficulty getting people to respond to in-mails. Do you guys have any suggestions on how you can make this more responsive?
I don't. I would, I have not had a huge problem. I would say, it's no different from if I were, if I had their email address and just email them directly. I would say instead of using in-mail, again, look for groups where you can message them directly and you have something in common. So you can say, hey, I saw we're in the same group. I would always, again, leave them an option so it's not just like, hey, are you interested? Because if somebody sends me an email that says, are you interested in talking to me about this job? And my answer is no, I'm more likely to hit the delete key. If I say, hey, are you interested in this job? Or maybe you know somebody, looks like you have a lot of connections, you have a background, are you interested in having a conversation about this, or know somebody that might, I find that people generally try to help you. So I just think, those two things for sure is finding people that you have something in common with. Also, if it's a second-level connection, use your go-between. LinkedIn is great because it tells you exactly how you're connected to that person. So again, if I'm trying to get to Julie and I'm not directly connected with her, it's super easy for me to say to Marla, like, hey, how well do you know this Julie person, and can you do this? And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine that's in San Diego is a VP of sales for a security company. So, like, let's say it could be a business or residential community, and, they have Joe Schmo driving around doing security. And so she was trying to get into Bumblebee in Los Angeles, and she had reached out and was trying to get a hold of the CEO, I think it was, for months and couldn't do it. So she came in here, she looked at the company, and she saw that I had a connection that was connected to the person she was trying to get to. So third level to her, second level to me, and then I needed a direct connection to this person, to the CEO. And so she reached out and said, how well do you know this person? And I said, well, we used to work together. I haven't talked to her in a few years, but we've been connected. Let me see if she's willing to make an introduction. And it was really that simple. And so sure enough, she, Patty was able to introduce her, and she got a phone call, she got a meeting, and she ultimately got the business. And she wouldn't have otherwise known how to get into Bumblebee if it hadn't been for LinkedIn. So leverage those connections. That's what they're there for.
Wow, that's great. Another quick question here, ladies. In the world of recruiting, in terms of trying to allocate resources, is this like the go-to way of doing it now? Would you say 90% of your resources is focused on using social media, or are you still using Craigslist and Monster and all the other job board type things? So can you talk a little bit about strategically how you would use social media as part of your recruiting mix?
Yeah, it completely depends on the type of position. So companies are not going to retain me to do a retained search, at 20% of the first year's comp for an entry-level position, right? For a blue-collar position. Rarely, rarely, rarely does that happen. So I personally do not use Craigslist a lot. Some of my clients do. I don't think they have a lot of success with it, but it is a cheap alternative, right? So to put in perspective for those of you that don't know, you can post something on Craigslist free in some areas still, I think, and where it's not, it may be 25 bucks. There's a couple cities that are more than that. So it's relatively inexpensive to $295 here or $400-ish on Career Builder and Monster. So that's why some people do it. The problem is you have, excuse the phrase, what I call the crap factor, which is you may get a great response, but you spend so much time sorting through people that are not even close to qualified, that just do job openings and just, fling their resume your way. So the answer to the question is, if I'm sourcing candidates, if I'm going in and sourcing, I am going to start here because as of right now anyway, I don't have to pay to go in and look essentially for people's resumes. I have to pay a lot of money on Monster and a lot of money on Career Builder to access their resume databases. So again, it just depends on how much recruiting you're doing. If you're a larger company, like I know, I have some friends on here today that are recruiters at larger companies, they may have a budget to pay $10,000 a year to get resume database search. That's not money I want to spend. I would rather spend it in other ways. So I will use LinkedIn to be able to essentially do a resume search. Sometimes I post job openings on Career Builder and Monster. Just depends on the level of the position. And it also depends on how successful my search is going here in my general networking. So I always use a multi-prong approach. It really is just dictated by the level of the position. If it's a CEO search, I may not use any of those things. It may be all word of mouth. It really is going to depend on that level and how confidential it's going to be.
Okay, good. Thank you. And this question may be more for Marla, but Linda, I know you know something about this as well. Marla, if we're vetting a candidate, and is it okay to go in and look at their LinkedIn profile and just contact where they've listed their previous employers? Is that resume out there for public view, and we can just follow up if we are interested in hiring that candidate, or do they explicitly have to give us permission to contact?
They do not have to give you permission to contact. You can contact. In fact, I often, back in the old days with just paper resumes, would tell clients, don't just contact the person they said that's on there from that company. See if you can find somebody else that worked with them at that company. Just call and ask a receptionist who worked in this department and see if you can talk to somebody, because very often, especially high-level management, they're aware of the company policy, data hire, data separation, and with consent rate of pay. But the other employees are not. Now, to the rest of, to everybody listening, I'll say you should only be giving data hire, data separation, and with employees' consent rate of pay. But there's nothing in the law that prohibits you from contacting prior employers and prior co-workers to ask them about the candidate.
And are we giving up our privacy by putting that information out there anyway? I mean, as people that are on the phone today listening in, it's like, you're putting it out there, then it's probably part of the public domain. Not those are the right words, but
it is.
Certainly
it is the right word. It's public, and it's public forever is the problem. Yes, and you open yourself. And we talked a lot about LinkedIn today and not much about Facebook, but I will tell you that there are proper ways to use Facebook. I have a client who may be on the line, I don't remember from the list, who was able to defend a workers' comp claim. The employee claimed to have been hurt at the store, but in fact, the day of the claimed injury, there was a picture of him being hurt in a different fashion on his Facebook page. So we were able to print that out and use that to defend the workers' comp claim. Perfectly legitimate use of Facebook. If the employee is not blocking you by a firewall or password or different tricks that you can use to keep that information from the public, then it's fair game.
Wonderful.
And Julie, let me jump in on just one last comment. I know we've got to wrap up. I just pulled up my profile because the other thing is, I have recommendations on here, as you can see in the middle. So the other thing I look at when I'm looking at candidates is, do they have any recommendations listed, and what's the relationship of those people to the candidate? Because anybody can make letterhead, steal letterhead, borrow letterhead, whatever you want to say, and give me a letter of reference, whatever. But in order for them to have a recommendation on LinkedIn, it can only be written by a first-level connection. I think it's a stretch, not impossible, but it's a stretch to believe that, I went out and created Genia Tax's, profile in order to write myself a recommendation, right? So I just think it's a stretch, and, sooner or later you're going to get caught, right? So that's what I look at also, is I look on their profile to see how robust it is, and if it just has, a title, if it just, if this just said, president and founder, and there was no context here, it's not worth anything to me, and I just keep moving on. But if I see something that's a thoughtful profile and there's some recommendations, I will absolutely use that information.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions. On behalf of Linda Duffy with Ethos Human Capital Resources, and why do I always do that? Same thing. Ethos Human Capital Solutions. And Marla Merhab Robinson with Merhab Robinson, Jackson, and Clarkson. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us and bearing with my tongue twisting here today. Please feel free to contact Linda or Marla with any questions you might have after this presentation. Again, the slides were available. Both Linda and Marla's email addresses as well as their profiles are included in the packet. We're going to be taking a little break here in December and covering the new year, new laws. So we'll be sending you an invitation to join us in the near future. Hopefully you'll put that in the back of your mind and remember that in January we'll have another webinar. We certainly appreciate your time today and look forward to providing you with more useful information in the future. Hope you have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.